Oh, are we live? Don't know if we're live or not. Hello? Test. Test. Alright, I think we're good. Hey, this is Man-Made Mead. Today we're doing a live stream. This is the October Monthly Mead. And so what we're doing for this, I wanted to, instead of do it as a video itself, I wanted to make it a live stream. So hopefully we'll get some people in here. Hey Trevor, how's it going, man? And we'll make it live and it'll be fun. So to review what I'm working with today, I've got, I'm making basically this is a triple berry blend packet of different berries and whatnot. And I'm going to use that. It's 3 pounds. And then ultimately I'm going to make about a 2 gallon mead. This is a 2 gallon bucket. So I'll probably only do about 1.25 gallons, maybe 1.5 gallons of water. Ultimately, I'm planning to lose some in a gallon glass carboys with sediment. So, I don't anticipate not having a ton of sediment at the bottom. Hello from Sweden, Jonas. Good to see you, man. Thanks for tuning in. Trevor at work. Hey, Miss Croc. I don't know how you say your name, but hello. How's it going? Okay. Excuse me. Like every video that I do, we're going to, of course, start our yeast water because that's the longest part of this entire process. So let's get that started. Super simple. We have we're using our pan. Everything has been sanitized with Star San, and I did that beforehand, so I don't have to worry about it right now. We're going to take and add some water on the top of this, or in our pot, and get it going close to 100 degrees, and really just going to see if we can get these yeast rehydrated properly. We're also going to add in our Go Firm Protect. The Go Firm Protect is the agent that helps the yeast rehydrate properly, and it's best if you actually put it into the water before the yeast. So I'm going to add my amount that I need. So I need 1.25 grams per 1 gram of yeast. I'm only using one yeast packet today. So that means I need about, 6.25 grams. And I have a little scale that I've started to use that I like quite a bit. It is this tiny little grams. I think it goes up to, I don't know, maybe 100 grams, 200 grams, 500 grams. That's what it is. But this thing helps me figure out exactly how much stuff to add. Prior to having this scale, I was just kind of guessing and adding things as I felt like they were enough, and isn't necessarily correct. There we go. What I do want to know, greetings from Southwest OKC. What's up, dude? So, Trevor, I know you're working on some meads. Let me know what you're working on. I'm curious. Seems like you always got something up your sleeve. First step with this is I want to weigh, since this is a little, this scale is going to, of course, be heavier with my measurement. So this little measurement, this right here is about 9 grams. So I'll need, in total, 15 grams of weight. So this is where the math gets kind of funky because I got to start adding in a bunch of different numbers, and I'm getting closer to being better about this, but it's still not perfect. So that's about 2.5. So I need about 4. I gotta watch to make sure my water doesn't overheat. I need to buy more. Actually, I have more Go Firm Protect coming in because as I've started to use it more and realized that my the amounts I was using before were actually way too low, and considering how much I needed. So as soon as I get my new packet, which is like 100 grams or something, I'll be able to do even more with it since I'm pretty low right now. Just a little bit more to put in here. I am using, Jonas, I'm going to use the Lauven EC 1118 because it is a yeast that works well with melomels, and it also works well generally with darker fruit flavors. It helps pull them out pretty easily, which is nice. So I want to use it for that. I'm only using the one packet, like I said. And this is 5 grams. So I like this yeast a lot. It's got a alcohol tolerance that's pretty high as well, about 18%. So I think that I'll be plenty for what I'm doing. I don't plan on going up that high with this mead, ultimately. What are your thoughts on non-mead yeasts? Actually, I think a lot of people are tending to try different kinds of yeast now, which is exciting because it opens up new doors. In reality, there is no perfect yeast for everything. You know, one yeast will work really well. Like in this case, this yeast is going to work really well for, I'm hitting the wrong burner, for for like the blackberry, blueberry, all those things, raspberries, but it's not going to work as well for maybe a traditional mead. So ultimately, I think when people are trying these different yeasts, they're ending up finding out that some work better than others. I know Hothead has a lot of great yeast coming out right now, and I want to try some. I know there are some that ferment really fast and high temperatures and a bunch of various things, so which is kind of cool. Use that for a cider, hard cider. That's awesome. Is it working well? Maybe that's a better question. Going to do a pumpkin spice shortly. Was thinking of melting a ton of Jolly Ranchers and making a mead of that, one flavor only. That would be really interesting. I can't imagine how sweet that would be. Like my candy cane mead was real sweet because of how much sugar was in the candy canes, and on top of how much honey I put in. It was pretty good. Yeah, I think that'd be interesting to try. Tonight, I am also drinking, this is my Tupelo traditional mead. It has been sitting for a while, and I'm about to bottle it some. I had a little bottle of it ready to just drink and try, and so it's pretty good. We are waiting for this to get up to 100 degrees so we can hydrate our yeast properly, and I have, like I said, I've introduced my Go Firm Protect. I put about 6.5 grams into it, and that will help the yeast rehydrate properly, which is nice. All right. In the meantime, I can show you guys while this is heating up the rest of what we're going to do. So I was fortunate enough to actually go and buy a 60-pound pail of honey, and if you've watched, I'm trying to think, I think I did, I don't know if I have a video yet of me using this honey yet, but I've used about half of it. I weighed it was 63 pounds when I got it, and I weighed it recently, and it is now at, 28 pounds. So I have relative to 25 pounds of honey left in it, which is still quite a bit, and I'm excited to keep using that. Recently made 2 1-gallon batches of homemade alcoholic eggnog. Wow, that's interesting. I'm making a peach capsamel. Ooh, that's fun. And I'm using T58 ale yeast. Promises a peppery. That's really interesting. I've heard a lot recently about peppery flavors, and people adding, like black pepper kernels into things, and it adds really interesting flavors. So I would like to try that at some point. We're going to check our water real fast. I bet it's rapidly approaching. We have hit about 100 now. So I'm going to take it off the heat. Make sure I'm not flying past 100. Yeah, I need to put a little water in here just because I don't want my yeast to struggle to get off the ground. So I'm adding a little water just to bring the temperature down a hair. Turn myself back this way. And we are at about 90, 100, right on it. That's perfect. So the whole purpose in adding the gopher was to get the yeast going and get some nutrients in the water, so to speak, so that they know what they're doing. And now, as I've learned, and I've been reading more and trying to get more into the science of things, I'm going to take my yeast and pour it on top and then let it sit for a second and really just make sure. Always get kind of nervous about the water being too hot, because then the yeast are going to like implode, and yeah. So now it's kicking up a little bit. I'm going to add just a little more. There's some after warming that's occurred. This is room temp water. We are now at, I'll read your stuff as I'm going along. 101. Okay, we're good now. We're going to add our yeast on top. Let it sit for a second. I don't normally stir immediately, just because I think it helps the yeast hydrate and whatnot. So this is going to sit, and actually, like I was saying a moment ago, I have before been keeping the yeast water at the 100-degree mark consistently through the rehydration. And I learned recently that it's better if you actually let them kind of dip down and go past that and start to level out to the room temp. So trying to do that. Let's see. Am I frozen? Wonder if I froze. Don't really know. Oh, can you guys still hear me, maybe? Yeah, mine? Okay. We're back. Like I was saying, that's going to dip down to the room temp. Okay, we are ready to go ahead and start introducing some must water into this. My blue triple berry blend has actually been sitting out. It is in a frozen container, and I let it set to thaw, and it's been thawing all day, so it's still a little cold. And whenever I put the room temp water in, it will cool down the water some. Ultimately, I'm probably going to have to let both equalize and sit for a little bit before I introduce them together, so they don't clash too much. But now we're going to get this going. The hardest part of the 60-gallon or 60-pound, container is dipping out of it, and I struggled and tried to figure out a better system for it, but ultimately I don't have a great resolve. This is another scale. This scale goes to, I think, 20 pounds. And I'm going to try today and use about 6 pounds of honey. So what I've been doing previously is getting like a paper plate, and this is kind of a barrier between here and there. I'm going to add my water in first. And my water, I'm going to go ahead and put in 1 gallon. And this is, like I said, a 2-gallon bucket. So between the 1 gallon of water and then all my berries and all this stuff, it's going to be pretty full. The fun part here is, I'll get a little closer to show you guys the awesome process I have to go through. I have to, there we go. So in my system of doing this, I have actually tried to get a better measurement scale and try to control how much honey I get on the sides, but ultimately I can't. What I've been doing is just taking and dipping out honey. And so I want to get, like I said, about 3 pounds per gallon. So I'll need 6 pounds in total. So I'll dip and then weigh the actual, between the paper and my little thing, that is about 0.7 pounds. So ultimately I'll need what? 6.7 to get my 6 pounds of honey. Well, not thinking about it, I don't know if I want 6 pounds just because I'm using the 1 gallon. I'm going to go ahead and do 3 pounds first, and then we're going to see a little more if I can add some more water in. I don't want to make it go all the way to the top though, because then I won't have any headspace for fermentation. All right, so process. This is right here about, oh, it's hard to see, about 3.9. Ooh, that's perfect. That is about 3.9 pounds of honey. So we're going to add this straight in to here. And like I said, my biggest problem is getting all the honey off the sides. Previously, there's just so much honey on the sides of it that I don't have a great system for clearing it off quite yet. So I'm working on a better result for that. But for now, we're just going to try and let it drip, and then we will start to stir. And sorry, I can't read your comments right now. I'm not looking at my computer or anything. What I'll probably do, I'll have to lose some honey, which is okay. Let's go ahead and just stir this much and see about this. All right, let me read some comments. I have a 4-gallon hydromel in the planning right now. Planning on making planning on trying different stuff. Mold spice, yeah, that'd be cool. I'll probably end up rinsing my berries with Star San real fast to try and get them from, or keep them from, getting any bad bacteria and having that take over. Now we need to stir. So we're going to use spatula and get this going. And this is room temp water, so you don't really need to heat up your water to get the honey to mix in. And you also really don't need to heat up your honey, because then you damage the honey ultimately. And we don't want to do that. That's not fun. All right. This is mixing in pretty well. I forgot to set a timer, but the yeast water has been going for like 7 minutes, so we're going to give it another probably 16 or 17 minutes. And then we will try to add it all together. I also need to, check the gravity of this and see where it's at. I'd love for it to be at about 1.09. If it sits about there, ultimately that's about 11.7 ABV, and to me that's a good range. That's not too heavy of a mead, and it's not too light. So I've had good success doing that. We're gonna take and get our gravity reading. So we have to see if we add more honey. Like I said, I believe I've added about 3 pounds. It might be a little less just because of the stuff that I lost off the top on the side of the container, but that's okay. I feel like you kind of have to lose some in this case. All right. Any more? A rubber scraper is the best method I have for getting honey out of measuring cups. Yeah. I actually don't have one of those. Have you tried any of Brewer's Best Flavor Extracts? No, I bought one a while back. I haven't used it yet, though. I think it was a strawberry and banana one or something, because I have a strawberry and banana mead that I wanted to try, and it didn't come off as strong as I wanted. I've got to add this to. Don't want to lose any. All right, let's see where we're at. Take a quick hydrometer reading. This is sitting at about, oh, is that pretty close? 10.8? Yeah, it's about 10.8. I'm going to add just a little more honey. I'd love to get to that 10.9. as a good range. And my yeast are going to run through that because, like I said, this yeast will sit up to about 18%. So this mead will be dry, and I will go through and back sweeten it in the end, and that's totally okay. Here's some more honey. I'm going to dip some more. I'm not going to measure in this case. I'm just going to dip and pour. This will probably put me over that 10.9, but that's okay. I'm not super concerned about it. At some point I'll figure out the best way to measure this and not have to lose much honey. Although, all things considered, I am not losing a ton. My goal is to make the fruit-flavored mead using tea and lemongrass. From City Steading. I know that's a YouTube channel, but I don't know what you're talking about in reference to that. Okay, we're going to stir this now. I would like to also use this time, every time I do a live stream, I get a lot of great questions, and I would love to try and answer these questions if you have any. So if you have any questions about mead making or my opinions on things, now I'm not the end-all be-all of mead making as far as opinions are concerned, and that's totally okay. But I do feel like I have some knowledge after doing this for a little while. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Oh, Jackson, I see what you're saying. One thing I just thought about too, if I plan on adding any more water to this, it's going to dilute that and the gravity is going to go back down. So what I'll go ahead and do, I don't know how much the berries, I mean this is a fair amount of berries, so I'm scared about it going over. I'm going to add just a little more water into the mix, and like I said, it'll dilute. We'll do another quick gravity reading. This is planning for losing mead whenever I put it into a 1 gallon batch. I'll tilt up my camera a little bit. There we go. If you have a question, Trevor, what's your question? I'd love to hear it. Stir this up. The whole mead making process is actually pretty simple, which is one reason I got into it is because with beer, you had to really learn how to boil things and go through a whole slew of steps. And with mead, I mean, you do the same thing, but your ingredients are easier to come by, in my opinion. You don't have to worry about grains and malts and all these other things. Let's see how much gravity I've lost now. Trying to do all that over the sink so I don't end up losing a ton of must. Where's my... There it is. Okay. Now the gravity reading. We are sitting at about... Actually, oddly enough, we're at 10.9 right now. So I'm just going to keep it like that. I'm content with that. Namely because the blueberries and the berry mix will have some sugars to it. The package has no added sugars, and that's great. It's unsweetened, so to speak, but it'll have natural sugars behind it. I'm going to do a pumpkin spice. Would you recommend doing it the way with pumpkin primary or going secondary? With Trevor, with the way I did it with the canned pumpkin, which I feel like ultimately the canned pumpkin had its own problems with sediment and flavors. I don't know if which was stronger, if I did canned or having used canned, or if I had done fresh, like you're thinking about doing. I would say, this is just my opinion, your best bet is to do it in the primary, taste it after you bracket over into the secondary, and then see if you want to add more flavor. You can always add more flavor, but you can't take flavor out. And sometimes it's harder to actually add more flavor in the secondary, in my opinion, just because the yeast have not had their hand on the fermentation of that fruit or whatever. So I would do that. I would do primary and secondary. Question here, do you stir your mead for the first weeks to aerate and degas? Yes, absolutely. I will always go through, and For the first couple days of a mead's life, every day I'll go through and degas it, just to try and keep the yeast happy and keep them from going crazy and making odd smells and just having problems. And it's kind of a painstaking process, especially if you have a big batch, but ultimately it's necessary. There's no getting around it. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're still waiting on the yeast, so we are going to take, the yeast have about 10 more minutes. We're going to take our berries, and I want to open them up, of course. They smell great. Here's what can I do. I'm going to take and pour the juice in first, and then I got to figure out how I want to do this. I want to rinse them without messing them up. I will, goodness, I don't even know. I didn't think about that. We're going to get the juice in first. So here's the juice from the fruit. Trying not to get any fruit in there because I'm going to bag them. I got a couple of berries in there. It's okay. Ooh, here, I'll just do this. Use my handy. This siphon's really nice because it has a grate on the bottom, and the grate is awesome for clearing out any, or taking away any opportunity for the stuff to get through. Now, shake this a little bit, try to get some of this juice out. And then ultimately, I'm going to bag this stuff up. So the problem with the grate, though, is it gets blocked up super easy, especially with heavy stuff like this. I'm going to bag up the fruit so they're easier to pull out in the end and maybe a little less mush when I'm racking over from primary to secondary. Okay. Now, I'm just going to stick this here real fast. So, next step is, I'm going to answer a question. What about boiling it instead of putting in directly? A lot less sediment. Boil, say, for 45 minutes, cool pitch. Yeah, I think you should try it. If you've watched my videos, you know that I'm all about trying things. So, if you want to give that a shot, by all means, I think that that's smart. And especially because you can be a liaison, so to speak, for that process, because not everybody's made it that same way. And so if you go through and you tell us how your process went, then that makes life a little easier for everyone else. All right, fun part here. Woo! I'm getting stuff everywhere today. There's so much stuff. All right, here's my bag. I think what I'm going to do, I'm actually just going to put them straight in and kind of risk it. And here's why. So last time I learned with my hydromel, I had all those problems. I had the problems because ultimately I didn't go down and push the fruit down during the day or really ever. I just kind of let it sit because I had never had an issue with the bad bacteria taking over. So I was kind of naive to that, so to speak. What I'm going to do is make sure that this sits and gets pushed down pretty much every day, and I just stay on top of it. And I'm also working on a little device, so to speak, that will help me just hold the fruit down 24/7 without me having to go and push it down every other day or whatever. I'm going to go ahead and cover my honey back up to make sure nothing gets in it. There we go. So if I used about let's say 3.5 gallons, I still have about 21.5 gallons, pounds of honey. Have you ever tried dried flowers in your mead and head ciders? I've never tried that. Actually, that's one thing. Everything that you guys have suggested to me previously, I have I've been putting in a giant list of things I want to make in the future for mead ideas. And this month, I just so happened to, somebody a long time ago recommended this mead, and it was early on, and I decided that I'm going to try and start knocking them out. So the thing is, you guys always suggest really great things to me. The problem is, I get tons of suggestions. So because I get so many suggestions, I can only do so many a month. Otherwise, I would be running out of honey like super quickly. And I got this little mixed berry juice all over the place. I actually have a few more berries in here, but I've already closed the bag, so that's all right. Now, one thing I do want to take and try is to see what the temperature of this must is at with my frozen berries that I've thawed, because ultimately I need to acclimate the yeast as well. So the yeast are about 5 minutes away from me starting to introduce them with the must, at which point I'll do it in a slow fashion and really just see if I can get them to the same temperature. Now this is sitting at about 70, which is not too bad. I was worried that the berries would make it be really, really cold and not ultimately work super well. But it's not too bad. Are there any other questions? Anyone have any questions? Speaking of suggestions, have you tried making mead and flavor it with hops? I actually have a friend who decided to go and start making mead, and one of his first meads was a dry hopped mead. So I'm curious to see what he says first. I'd like to try it as well, but I haven't done it yet, no. Now, have you ever heard of prickly pear mead, since you're down south? I've heard about it. I have never made it. That's one mead I've never tried, or one fruit I've never tried using. I'd like to. I'm all for trying a bunch of different fruits. Ooh, that's good. My Tupelo traditional. I've actually back sweetened a little bit, just in this little container, and it is really good. It's really refreshing, not too heavy. It's pretty good. It's really good. Let's see. Hold on. Prickly pear. Make a braggot. Yeah. The guys, if you guys are looking for a good mead podcast to check out, there's one called The Mead House, and it's a bunch of older gentlemen that are super talented and have a lot of experience making mead, and they do a podcast where they talk with big-time mead makers and yeast people, and they just bring hosts on and guests all the time to talk about their different stuff they're working on. And it's really interesting because one of the guys, the main guy named JD, always talks about making braggots, because that's his favorite thing to do, is make a braggot. Now, what I'm going to do while I'm waiting for this is, actually, I probably should get another final gravity reading as soon as I dump the yeast in, so I can make sure that's right. But I'm going to start aerating the yeast, the must. This is a little aeration machine. It's just a pump with an oxygen stone at the end, and just pumps straight oxygen in. One day I'll fancy up in life, and I'll go ahead and buy a CO2 container and do it in a more fast fashion. But for now, I'll have other things. Now, one thing, while I'm waiting, my yeast are almost done. I do want to tell you guys, I have a bunch of videos that are going to be coming out real soon. So what you can do to help me out, if you look down in the description, there are a ton of links you can check out to help me and support me. Now I have like PayPal things, and I have Patreon, and I have the Society 6, which is like my merchandise store, and a bunch of just other things that are all go to support me and help me make content and continue to do this for you guys. Now, you can also, one last thing, and I know this was the thing a while back, but sometimes YouTube can be kind of sketchy about their posting of videos and putting my videos into your sub box. There's a little bell down there. if you go down and click on the bell next to my thing as well, that will notify you when I upload, and that gives you a greater chance to see my content. So check out those things below, and that'd help me out big time. All right, let me show you this little aeration machine, what it's doing. I really like this thing. It was super cheap, maybe 30 bucks, but it's basically just adding oxygen in and bubbling up quite a bit, but that's okay. Ultimately, I need to get the oxygen content in the mead to be way heavier. Way heavier, goodness. Just to be more in general. All right. We are super close to adding the yeast on top of this, and then we'll take a gravity reading. I have lots of honey here that I'm going to painstakingly stand here and hold and try and drain into this because I would love to get as much as I can. Yeah, the mead house is on break right now, but for people who haven't heard of them or haven't listened to their stuff, they have like an archive of 99 episodes now, and those episodes are all very great, and I definitely enjoy listening to them, and they always bring on really cool guests. So if you're looking for a podcast to get to listen to, I think some of their episodes are rather long, but it's a good car podcast. I've used an immersion blend both. Yeah. Yeah, I've ran into an issue. I ran into an issue the other day with degassing something. It was the first day I degassed it, and I went a little too heavy with the stirring. And next thing I know, the foam had overtaken me, and I was cleaning it up off the floor. So that was not very fun. But it's okay. All right. We can do a little more stirring. I got honey on this bag now. It's okay. This is going to affect the gravity again, but I'm not crazy concerned about that. Living where I am, brewing supplies are quite hard to come by. Could I boil baker's yeast to supplement yeast nutrient? Baker's yeast, I don't know. That's a great question. My opinion is, if you have an Amazon account, then you have every facet to basically get whatever you need for brewing. That's the great thing about Amazon is I just ordered. I don't really have a great way to get Gopher and Protect, and so I just ordered some off of Amazon, and I got it in, and or I'm about to get it in, and so I'll have plenty. I think you could do that with yeast nutrient and Energizer, GoFirm and Fermate K, any of those powders you need. Raisins are not really a great source. I wouldn't depend on them as a source for your nutrients. Don't do it. It's not going to work. Have you carbonated anything before? I want to try it with this hydromel, but a little afraid of bottle bombs. Yeah, you got to be real afraid. If you haven't killed the fermentation, that's where your biggest problem lies. Ultimately, when you kill the fermentation, it's not a scary thing, but if you don't completely kill it, a little yeast will pick up, and that's where the bottle bomb idea comes in. So make sure you use like Camden tablets, potassium sorbate, and that will hopefully slow it down. And then, of course, my next step is to cold crash it, and then that will take all the yeast and put them to the bottom, so when you rack it over, there are hopefully no yeast still alive. Okay, next step. Yeast are ready to be acclimated. So I'm going to take and add some some must into this. And this will introduce the new gravity into the yeast, so I don't shock them. You can actually shock the yeast and virtually not kill them, but put them at a great disadvantage in life. Sometimes it does kill them, just because yeast are creatures themselves, and they respond very poorly to jumping into a new environment. Just like if you are in a pool, and you go jump in the hot tub, it's one thing. But if you jump in the hot tub after like a cold pool, into the pool after a hot tub, it's a different story. So we kind of don't want to freak them out, ultimately. I use a lot of raisins. They aren't the best, but some nutrients, you're right, it is some. However, you're not getting enough, and that's part of the problem. Some and enough are so far apart that your yeast might be struggling, and then you end up getting things like fusels. And if you, Canadian Sasquatch District did a really great video on this about fusels and talking about what they are, and they're basically the off flavors, off alcohols that are produced by yeast having a hard time. So you don't want to deal with that. That's not something fun to deal with at all. So just go ahead and spend the extra $10, $15 and buy yourself some yeast nutrient and energizer and those things, and that will help it. All right, this is going to start to continue to get acclimated in both temperature and gravity. Temperature-wise, it is sitting at 81 degrees, and this is sitting at significantly lower, about 70 degrees. So we got to start adding a little more over time. In about 2 or 3 minutes, I'll add some more must into that, and then it will we'll continue to go from there. Of course, I want to, like I said, take a gravity reading. I want to wait till after I add my yeast water because that will change the gravity. I want to keep it at that 10.9 if possible. That would be super nice. Anyone have any more questions? I like answering questions. Pretty fun. And not that I feel like I know everything, but I feel like I know quite a bit now, enough to hopefully answer some questions for you. You have a restaurant? Yeah. There's a lot of brew shops. You might have to travel a little bit. I know I have to, my next endeavors in life, I've got a couple, I've raided the liquor store that has all the mead around me, so I'm going to have to start to travel a little more to find more meads, which is unfortunate. So if you guys ever feel like sending me a mead you want me to try, then that's great. I'll try it. Now, the one little limitation with that is I have decided that I don't want to. I originally had the idea that I wanted to try you guys' meads, and in retrospect, I've kind of came back on the thought that that might not be the best idea in the world, just for my own safety to be careful. So please don't send me your own meads because I don't want to make you feel like I don't care about them by not posting a video. Generally, I just want to keep myself safe. But if you have a mead that is one from a commercial brewery or commercial meadery, then by all means, I will absolutely try those things. I just want to be really careful. One thing, I can show you guys while this is acclimating, I have some cool new labels. So, let me find one somewhere in here. Went through and bottled a bunch of stuff a while back, so give me one moment as I find them. Where are they? Somewhere in here. How have I missed every single one? There we go. Here's some examples. So I use a lot of beer bottles right now, and because they're super simple. Here's one of them. Hopefully you can see it. This is my new design. It is a nice little man-made mead logo, so it kind of makes me feel like I'm making some more high-quality stuff. And then here's another one, just a different color. This is the Bochet. This was the blueberry and vanilla. So different flavors, but I have more things in the works, so I'm excited for that. Keep making new designs and having cool stuff from that. Do you use potassium metabisulfites in the potassium sorbate or just the sorbate? I've heard both sides of the battleground. After I've also done a little research on this, you need to sulfite before you sorbate, because the sulfites in that order, I'm trying to remember why. Had something to do with how the yeast interact, but When you sulfite, you're ultimately prolonging the life of the mead, which is nice because you want that. And of course, it does slow down some of the yeast and whatnot. But the sorbate is where that mainly happens. So I always am sulfiting, sorbating, and using Camden tablet stuff like in that order. So sulfiting first, if that makes any sense. We're going to add even more must into this mix to get it closer to the temperature. The mead's a really nice color. It's kind of fun. I'm excited to see if it'll clear up. I don't know if these berries will be really mushy in the future. They might be, and it might cause some problems, but I guess we'll just find out. I think we're getting closer to our acclimating temperature. Let's see where we're at. This mead itself is at 70 something, about 70. This is at now 75, 77. So it's going to take a little bit, but we'll add some more here soon. Still acclimating. Oh man, I gotta start cleaning up a little bit. I've got a lot of stuff. Use a lot of dishes whenever you're making mead. Any other questions? Here's one question I have for you guys: is what's a common issue that you've ran into as you've been making mead? What's something that you have ultimately maybe done wrong or wish you'd known prior to making mead? I think all of us get involved with it, kind of go in head first, and then next thing you know, we're like, well, I made this, this, and this mistake. Even after you maybe watched a bunch of videos and read a bunch, we still kind of fall down a little bit. So what are some things that you have fallen through with? Could we send you the recipe instead of the finished product? If yes, if you send me a recipe, I will gladly try to make it in the future. Like I said earlier, I have a whole list of meads that I want to make, and so I'm trying to go down them. And it's going to take a while because even with 25 pounds of honey left, I honestly will not have enough containers if I try to make 15 meads in the span of a month. So I use them. It'll take a little while for me to run through it. But absolutely, send me a recipe to use. Bad math, absolutely bad. You saw me earlier if you were watching. I was doing math trying to do the 1.25 grams plus all these nonsense numbers in your head, and so you got to be the math is important. You want to get close. I feel like if you're 0.25 off with your grams of go firm, then ultimately you're probably okay. When I first started, I created a massive bottle bomb because I didn't understand the word fermentation in second fermentation. Yeah, needless to say, stool mop ceiling. Ooh, did you have to repaint your ceiling? Because I imagine that was probably pretty fun. I would not recommend creating any bottle bombs in the future. It's probably not smart. Let's add some more must in here. Our aerator is getting this nice and oxygenated, so the yeast are ready to go. One next step I should have done early on is added oxygen to basically the yeast water. That would have helped. I managed to get it all off before I could damage anything. That's good. Temperature control. I need a fermentation chamber. Hey, that's really interesting because I'll go ahead and show you guys mine. Be careful when you're taking your airlocks off because I had one dead fruit fly. Well, oh yeah. Those are not fun. Just started my first mead ever. Ultimately, it will be a methylene. Nice, that's awesome. I watched some of your videos. Well, thanks. That's appreciated. I'm glad I could help you guys. I'm finding it difficult when I back sweeten. There's residue at the bottom of my bottles. Probably some extra fermentation or your honey not totally dissolving because that could be an issue. Let me show you guys what I have. I think I have a video of about this coming up soon. I've got my friendly cat who likes to sit here. But this is my own fermentation chamber. If you guys have seen my new mead room, what I have is basically some cabinets, and then I built a shelf up here, and this shelf is allowing me to store more stuff. So these are all empty bottles right now. Every one of those is empty actually, and then the two boxes over there in the right corner are some wine bottles. But this is my fermentation chamber. What I have is I bought a freezer, and then in my freezer I am using this little, this is a controller for the freezer. And what it's allowing me to do is control the temperature that I'm fermenting at. So this is what I'm fermenting right now at about 61 degrees because of all these things. Now, the Tupelo is a finished mead, and then I got some other stuff going on. But it's allowing me to control all of my fermentation, and it's really nice to have. Frankly, I wanted to do this, and I got a great deal on Sam's, and that helped me out. Oh, one last thing. I bought this thing as well. This is just a little teacher cart, and it allows me to store all of my stuff so I can be a little more organized in life. So I have all of my stuff sorted out. Makes me feel more professional. Wow, I got a super chat. Let's see. Hey, bottle bombs. Thanks, Chris. You're right. Bottle bombs are not fun. Hopefully you're not creating them yourself, because that's not fun at all. There we go. Gotta set myself back up. Here we go. How can you be sure when it's safe to bottle? Really, what I do is I leave my airlock on until I bottle. So before you back sweeten, what you need to do, you need to make sure to back sweeten and then wait about a week or two before you bottle, because then you can really see if any fermentation kicks up. Otherwise, you'll probably run into the situation where you're going to create a bottle bomb if you back sweeten then bottle. So back sweeten, wait a little while, see if there's any extra fermentation that happened, and then from there you can bottle if you think it's safe. When I first started, I was a bit bootleg, so sanitation back then was quite poor, drank and made poison. Whoa, yeah, it's not good, not too great. If interested in combining with grape juice, discount. Yeah, I think one day it'd be cool to see a like wine kit kind of mead hybrid. I think it'd be interesting. I don't know. I've also never made wine itself, so maybe making wine and making beer and trying these other things would be fun. I previously made pine mint using Welch's 100%. Absolutely, yes. That is the only problem, quote I say, with using those things, in my opinion, is that I feel like you run the risk of getting off flavors because of all the preservatives in the juices. So I feel like if you get a juice that has no preservatives in it, you're less likely to run into those issues. Where is my meat? There it is. Oh, that's good. Now, let's see where we're at temperature-wise. We're sitting at about 73. What are we at here? 71. Okay. I think this is ready to be introduced to each other, so I'm just going to go ahead and pour the yeast water in that's been acclimated. It's been sitting for quite a while. There we go. And of course, one thing I do want to do is get another reading to see if the gravity has changed very much, if at all. So we're going to find out real fast if it has. All right, let's get a gravity reading. Hold on, I gotta get my stuff. I'll read your comments in just one moment. Got too much stuff going on right here. Buy juice without preservatives. Just read the ingredients. Yes, you're absolutely right. It's just doing it. Remember that the herd cider from store juice should have 3 ingredients. Oh, you mean like just in general should have 3 ingredients to keep, yeah, okay, I follow you. Taking my little aerator out real fast. Sorry, I gotta walk out of camera shot so I can see about getting this in here. Oh, I'm trying not to spill. Okay. Lost a little bit over here. Need to get a better way to transfer this over. Let's stick this back in here. All right, here is our gravity reading. Oxygen helps the yeast reproduce. Yes. What flavor was this? I missed it. It is I should have said that a little bit ago. It is a triple berry. So it's blueberries, blackberries, and raspberries. So kind of dark stuff. I'm using Lalvin EC1118 yeast because it suits well for the darker fruits and all those things. What are we sitting at now? We are sitting at 1.8, which is frankly a little too low on my scale. I want to try and get it back up to that 1.09. So I'm actually going to add some honey on top, which will be good. And then we'll get one more gravity reading and go from there. Get our honey. Can the gravity reading change with or without oxygen? Generally, no. Your gravity reading is based on the weight of your must. So, I mean, I'm sure in super scientific land, you can absolutely change it. Somebody will no doubt say to me that it changes with oxygen. However, I'm gonna argue that it doesn't change as much as people might think. So, no, I don't know if that answers your question completely. We're just gonna get a little more honey, try to get to that 1.09 level. Okay. We probably just went over it, but that's all right. This yeast is the Lalvin EC1118. It goes up to around 18%, so I'll have plenty of room to go from there. Where do you get all of your honey? This is Dutch Gold honey. I was able to buy it in bulk. This is clover honey. I should have mentioned that a while ago. Clover honey, I was able to buy a huge bulk pack of it for a fair price. So I got online and bought it, and it was cheaper. I did look, before I did this, so some of you guys are going to say, like, why didn't you go local? Well, I was going to go local, and then people around me, they wanted about $300 for 60 pounds of mead, or 60 pounds of honey. And unfortunately, that was a little higher than I can afford right now. So this is less than that. If you're curious, go to DutchGold.com, DutchGoldHoney.com, and you'll find all their options. They have a bunch of really cool honeys, like one I want to try is the avocado, I cannot talk today, blossom honey. That seems really good to me, and I'll be curious to maybe try a small batch of that at some point. Do you always use clover honey, or what kinds do you use? I am using clover honey in this case because it is the honey I have in bulk. I've used Tupelo, black gum Tupelo honey. I've used orange blossom. I've used wildflower honey. They're all really great. Generally, I don't think there's any like bad honey. So I think you can't really go wrong. I would say that clover honey is probably the cheapest, but still good honey itself. Do you have any tips for hydromels? Keep them low as far as your ABV, of course, because that makes it a hydromel. And then recognize the fact that if you're adding other ingredients, you have a low ABV mead, meaning that your alcohol has a lower chance of fighting off bad yeast. So you got to be real careful with that. Otherwise, that's people kind of assume like you can just put fruit in anything and it'll be okay. It's not totally true. There is a method to the madness of like keeping a fruit mead from going bad, and that's by pushing the fruit down and staying on top of those things. Okay, one more time, we're going to get a gravity reading. Avocado, interesting? Yes, it is interesting. I think I'm very curious to try that. Where do you get your buckets? I get my buckets from a brew shop. I've got 2 brew shops around me. I recently found out there's another one, which is super nice. So I have lots of options in life for trying things, and I get them from there, or my carboys I've actually been getting online for like my 1 gallons and my 3 gallons, ultimately. So hold on, I know I'm not in shot, but trying to get another gravity reading real fast. And my little bag is actually going to work really well. Hopefully it doesn't, I don't think it'll bust. It's not like cheesecloth, it's a little thicker than cheesecloth, which it just makes life easier. If you're making a mead, I highly suggest trying to use a bag for your fruits, because you're basically avoiding a lot of the chances of like your fruit getting mushy. And recently I dealt with that. I made another mead that there's a video coming out for at some point, and it got really mushy, which was not fun. I may have missed, but why are you shooting for 10.9? I think that 10.9 is about a 12% ABV, and I just see that as a good medium level, because I found out, like, as I'm letting people try my meads and ultimately just see what mead is like, some people get scared off by heavy meads like 18%. Like, I myself like them. However, I know if I want to appease my friends and whatnot, ultimately that I'm going to have to make a mead that's probably middle ground and lower ground, so to speak. Let's see, where are we at? We're at, well, I think I got it right on it. We're at 10.9, a little over 10.9, probably 10.95. That's totally it. That's where I wanted to be. We're going to add this back in. We're going to leave our oxygen to continue its process and continue to oxygenate the mead. And then I'm actually going to do a little cleaning up as I answer more questions. Could you cut a hole in the bucket with a lid and expect to... I think you'd have to make sure, if you're trying to use just any bucket, that you seal it really well. If you buy fermentation buckets, most of the time they have a very tightly fit seal on them, so they're meant to contain, keep any oxygen and bad things out. Doing it yourself, I'm sure you can do. The problem is you might end up not sealing it super well, at which point you do run the risk of getting bad things in your mead. Let's see, did I freeze? Hello? I think I froze on here. Sorry, if you can still hear me, I'll continue to answer questions. Are you going to try to make a braggot? Yes, I would love to make a braggot. My problem is, like I said, I have a list of ones to make, and I'm getting there at some point. How long do you leave your mead, oxygen stone, in the mead? I'll leave this in. It's been going for about 20 minutes. I'll leave it in for another 25, just to really oxygenate it. For those, what are the names of the 2 brew shops? There's one called The Brew Shop in Oklahoma City, and then there's one in, I think, North OKC or something. What's it called? Learn How to Brew or something like that. I can't think exactly. How do you degas? So the process of degassing is basically taking, and whenever your mead is going through fermentation, you are going to stir it, and it'll foam up, and that's CO2 being released. And you want to do that within the first 1 to 7 days of the mead's life while it's really active. I only ask goes to 18%. I believe you said you like sweeter meads. Yes, this mead, Trevor, will be dry. However, I'm going to probably back sweeten it, which I think that's, to me, I could go the route of like just hammering down and using like, uh, 4 pounds of honey per gallon. But then I'm using, I feel like, more and more honey. And right now, I'd rather just back sweeten with less honey and just do it the right way. Have you used a Muslim bag holding down the fruit extract? That's a viable way to do that. I am using a bag right now. I mean, for this mead, in here, this bag is holding all of my fruit, and then I'll use it like a tea bag before I put it. Before I take it out, I'll squeeze it. So same idea essentially. When starting, I bought a home brew Ohio 1-gallon kit. It comes with a bucket, a glass carboy. So I started 2 meads at once. That's awesome. Have you made a meth blend before? I have not. I'd like to make one at some point. Have you looked at an app called Master Brewer? I haven't, but I will absolutely look it up after this. I love your use of a soundbar. Yeah, this where I previously lived, I had that, and then I moved here, and I didn't need it for my TV anymore, and so it's mounted now. How much honey do you back sweeten with generally? That's to taste. Now here's the thing, that sounds like a cop-out answer, and it's not. Tasting, you want to do it to what you like. So some people, the last time I back sweetened, I added, it was about 1-gallon batch, or excuse me, it's 3-gallon batch that I did 3 different separates for. So I did like 1 pound in 1 gallon, and then like 1.5 in another one. Anyways, and it turned out pretty good. So it just depends on your taste and what you like. How do you back sweeten? I never have. The way you back sweeten is by killing the fermentation using, normally people use white powders or thyme. So you can let your mead just kind of make its way out of fermentation, and that works well. But it takes a long time. Or you can use some white powder stuff. The white powders are things like Camden tablets or potassium sorbate, potassium metabisulfite. They're really long names, but basically stuff that you ultimately can stop and slow down fermentation. And then cold crashing is another way that will stop the yeast from reproducing, at which point then you can add in your honey and back sweeten like that. But if you do it any other way, you might make a bottle bomb. And bottle bombs are not fun because they will explode, and no one likes that. Let's see. Any tips on bocets? I'm not getting a very strong fermentation. That could be, did you use enough honey / did you use enough nutrient or energizer? A bochet, you're burning the honey, and I heard it explained this way. The reason we add like these nutrients into our meads is because ultimately what you're doing is you're creating, just like we can't live off just sugar or just honey because it doesn't have all the nutrients we need. We have to go and supplement in other fashions. So what we're doing with the nutrients, we're allowing them, like giving them the fruits and veggies and whatnot. So you need to make sure that bochet has enough of those, because then if it doesn't, you've caramelized the honey, which already takes away part of the nutrients, and you're not feeding the yeast as much as they need. Could you always use a lower ABV yeast so you won't have to back sweeten? Yeah, I might try that. That's a good idea. I've just been using my Lalvin stuff because I have so much of it. Do you like making bigger or smaller batches? I like making bigger batches, but most of my monthly meads are generally smaller batches because they're test batches to see what flavors I like and what works well, because I do have 4 or 5 recipes that have worked well, and so I'm making bigger 5-6 gallon batches of those actively. Honey and sugar. Without honey, it's not a mead. Yes, you're definitely right. How do you add your nutrients? Do you stagger them or do you add them all at once? I used to go through and just add them all at once, but I found out if you stagger them, you're ultimately helping the yeast out and feeding them over a longer period of time so their fermentation is more complete. A lot of times if you just throw it all in, the fermentation will go fast and furious until it runs out of nutrients, and then they'll die out. and then you have your problems with fusels and all the off smells and all those things that we don't want to deal with. So staggering helps day 0, 2, 4, and 6 generally if you break your yeast nutrient down, which I do have an example of that. I have a baggie right now for another mead. Find it somewhere in the world. Well, I did. And then I set it down somewhere, I guess. I have somewhere a baggie of my yeast nutrient and yeast energizer mixed into each other, and I just go ahead and pour that into my staggered nutrients. Honey and maple, yeah. I think it might be not enough honey. Can I add? You can add more honey. The problem with this is the Bochet, right? Yes, your Bochet is you're not using your caramelized honey. So if you were to caramelize your honey again and add it in, then you're going to get the flavor. Otherwise, you're just going to get a more sweet, you're not going to get your burnt side of taste. You're just going to get your normal burnt, whatever you have now, plus sweet. My Bochet took a long time to take off too. Yeah, definitely. They have a tendency to do that. I'm afraid to degas because I don't want to oxygenate them. Well, receive, I don't know what your timeline is, but if you're in the first week, 2 weeks of fermentation, it's okay to degas. You're not going to add oxygen. And adding oxygen naturally is not bad in the first primary stages, secondary. Once you get into racking stages, you don't want to add oxygen in. So as far as your Bochet, cooking the honey changes the sugars to sugars that yeast can't eat. I cooked 5 pounds and I added 1 pound of raw to make sure the yeast can eat it. Yeah, that's a good idea. The thing is, like Trevor's saying, you're heating up certain sugars in the honey. Each honey is made up of multiple sugars, and in the scientific world, your glucose and sucrose and whatever other sugars there are, they all have different points at which they caramelize, meaning when they caramelize, they're not viable for the yeast to use anymore as nutrients. And so if you've really heated your honey, sometimes you literally caramelize it all, and then they have no nutrients. So adding a little in there actually gives that nutrient, like he's saying. Another idea is caramel mead. I read caramel doesn't ferment, so how could I make it without using caramel? I don't know. That's a good question. I wish I could tell you. I would say try it. While people do have lots of knowledge, I think that you can be the ultimate test of that. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it works, great. I would assume that because caramel is sugar, it will work. So I don't know. That's a great question. Isn't traditional mead very hard to oxidize? No, I think they're all pretty equal. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't heard that. Maybe I'm wrong. Channel's helped me a lot with the first 2 batches. Thank you so much. I'm glad I could help in some form or fashion. You and Got Me Live podcast are my 2 main sources of mead info. Any other recommendations? I would say Canadian Sasquatch is a great guy. The Groenfeld Meadery, he doesn't post very often, but when he does post, it's always fun. Who else is there? I can actually look. I'm subscribed to a couple different guys on here, so give me one moment. Brad Smith is a guy that's made some videos that are pretty cool. Barley and Hops, they talk a lot about beer, but ultimately they also talk about mead some. Then there's Brad Allison, he's another guy. Basic Brewing TV, these are all great options for you to go through and find more information, aside from me or whomever else. Make a traditional and add caramel towards the end, just for flavor. That's a great idea, Trevor. How do you tell your friends the difference between mead and honey wine? I think mead is honey wine in its own form, so to speak. Essentially, most of my friends don't even know what honey wine is, so when I reference honey wine, then it's a whole other world. They think wine, and then they think honey wine or whatever. So when I'm talking about what mead is, I of course say the big spiel of it's the old alcohol that Vikings drank and blah blah blah, and talk about the process a little bit. And so, but my big thing is I tell people that it's like wine, but it's based around honey and extra flavors, not around the yeasts. We use yeasts that are like in packets, and most wines are natural yeasts. But caramel has dairy in it. Would you want that in your mead? I've never messed with dairy in a mead, so that's a good question. Canadian Sasquatch is really good. Yeah, he's great. I love him a lot. He's taught me a lot of stuff too. If caramel doesn't ferment, could you use the back sweeten? Yeah, definitely. That's a good idea. What specific nutrients do you use generally? I will show you. I use Go Firm Protect whenever I'm first introducing my yeast and my water together. I have quite a few in here. So I have just some store-bought yeast nutrient that I've used. This is just pretty good. I mean, it's 1 teaspoon per gallon, so I can use that. I'll mix that with my yeast energizer. And with my yeast energizer, these two, I'll use my staggered nutrient, whatever. Then my Go Firm Protect, which goes with my yeast in the beginning. And then I have Fermented K, and this is another yeast nutrient. And the yeast nutrient itself is great to add at the last, when you reach the 1/3 sugar break, meaning your start of your mead's gravity, which mine is 10.995, whatever. So 1/3, when I break the 1/3 barrier, which is like 10.3, I'll add in the Fermented K, and that will continue to finish out the fermentation. For peppermint mead, which would be better, candy canes or peppermint leaves? I've had great success with peppermint candy canes. It's a huge pain, I'll tell you that right now, to unwrap them. However, you kind of get used to it. I would do that before I did the peppermint leaves. Here, he's done mead, candy canes, yep. I have done, and it was very, very good. Okay, so this has been sitting for a little while. I'm going to take out my oxygen stone and unplug here. Now the good news is this is ready to sit for a while. I want to make sure that this gets pushed down every once in a while. So what I'm going to do for the next probably 2 weeks is open it up each day and push down the bag of berries, because that will keep any bad bacteria from overtaking it. And as it becomes more alcoholic and gets those sugars to convert, what's going to happen is it's going to allow me to not have to fight the battle as much, because naturally alcohol fights off those bacteria. And then last step, every single time, is, because I have so many meads, which is super awesome, but can be kind of cumbersome, is making sure I'm labeling it so I know exactly what I have and what I'm working with. And I only have 1 2-gallon bucket, so I'm not too worried about getting confused. This one confused anywhere. But this is the this was the October Monthly Mead, and this is the 10/7/18 primary stage. This will sit for, I plan to let the berries and everything mix, really to see when the fermentation stops. So if the fermentation goes for about, I don't know, let's say 2 weeks, I'll let it sit, add another 2 weeks on, and then move it over just so I get those flavors. I'm putting the berries into the primary. I might end up adding them into the secondary. My original idea was to take my bag of 3 pounds and break it in half, but what I saw on the bag is you don't want to refreeze them after they've been thawed, so I didn't want to risk that. I'd rather add more berries in the secondary. What kind of mesh bag is that? How do you... I got mine from a brew shop. It is... What is it? It's had a name. It's just like a little... I can't think of the name of it. It's a mesh bag, like you're saying, that is food safe. I mean, I got it from a brew shop. If you're... I think most any bag will work. I've heard people use like paint strainer bags from Lowe's for things, and I mean, people have said that's worked. So I assume that it is safe. Now, I don't know exactly. I say if you can find a brew shop or get online for Amazon or something, you can probably find these bags pretty simply. When you bag the berries, could you weigh it down, keep it submerged? Yes, I could. I'm working on a method for that. Don't have a great answer for it right now. You could find a metal basket that fits in the bucket, sterilize it, and flip it upside down. Which that's very interesting that you say that, because I just did that with the previous mead and actually pulled it out today. So I didn't know if I was going to reach up to the top of this. I'm pretty close to the top. What I can do is use my little, this is like a strainer for like cans, but I can actually save myself some heartache and take this little metal basket like he's saying and put it in here. And because it has this pegs on the top, it'll push that down, or I'll lose it at the bottom. That's good. I might not be able to make this work, but we'll see. My bag is not huge. Well, I don't think this will work, like I'm saying. Darn. Also, side note, I noticed there's some honey residue on the bottom of this, so I need to stir this more to make sure I get all of that honey out and off before it sits for a while. I also just dropped my little thermometer and it decided to implode on me. I'll have to fix this later. Okay, sorry, I missed a lot. Just get some glass marbles, sanitize them, put those in the bag with the berries. Yeah, that's a good idea. I don't have it right now, unfortunately. Do you prefer carboys or bucket fermenters? I prefer bucket fermenting right now for the primary stages, the secondary stages, because ultimately there's more room for things for the fermentation to occur. I think that the carboys though are better for long-term storage. And I have 3 3-gallon carboys, and I also have a 6-gallon carboy now. So I've got lots of carboys that are not being used. Or like T-Mite said, you can sterilize marbles. Yeah. Have you ever used medical tape as a label? I have never used that. That's a good idea though. I didn't even know about that. Muslin bags, yes, definitely. That's what they're called. That's the fancy way. Watching The Office, that's a good show. What's the temperature range to activate the yeast? To activate them, you're at 105 to 109. To ferment them, you're sitting at 59 to 80. Oh, hold on. What am I? No, I'm thinking about that. I think it's 59 to 86. So that's got a decent range for that. Or it might be smaller. Regardless, I'll ferment at about 62, 63 the whole time. Okay, so now the thing is, we're done with this part. We're going to go ahead and close our cap as it explodes with water. Fermentation is going to kick up probably soon. And my next step in a few minutes will be to clean up. But I'm going to go ahead and start to wrap this up. I want to answer some more questions. Got about 15 minutes, and then I've got to take care of this business in life. And I just lost a little screw for my... Oh no. Oh well. I'll find this later. There it is. So let's get some more questions going. I want to answer as many as I can with what time I have left. So give me a moment to get reset up in a way that makes more sense. All right. I was careful to sterilize everything while making my last batch, but I forgot to sterilize the spoon I stirred it with, and am I in trouble? I don't think so. Unless you were just like dropping it on the floor and being reckless with it, you're probably fine. If you're generally good about washing your silverware, you're probably fine. I wouldn't worry too much. You can't really do much about it right now, because otherwise, if you try to kill the fermentation, you'll kill the fermentation and it won't go anywhere. So I would just let it go, see what happens. Would you recommend using oak chips in mead to flavor? Yes, absolutely. Oak chips, oak cubes. There's a new thing called, what are they called? Are they spirals? Spirals. These infusion spirals are really interesting. I want to do this. I'm adding it into the chat right now. this is a really cool place to try these different spirals. Basically, they're like charred wood that you can get the flavors with. People will add them into wines and beers and whatnot and get those different nice flavors. So I would recommend doing that. But oak chips work. They're the fastest. If you know any commercial breweries, most of the time they use oak chips because they get the flavor in faster than like aging in a barrel or whatever. But these infusion spirals, as I've heard, are very fast as well. So I would use those. How much mead do you lose from a gallon batch when you rack? Depends on how reckless you've been. With this guy right here, since I've bagged it, I'm probably going to lose a little less because I won't have as much sediment. If you, for example, I did a pear mead one time and I didn't put them in bags, and I had, the mead was this, and I only got about this much out, like half of it out, because I had so much sediment at the bottom that I didn't want to get it into the new carboy. So just depends on how reckless you are, in my opinion. What wood chips have you used? I haven't used many wood chips quite yet, or any. I just know this from hearing some podcast things and whatnot. Basically, oak or all the different types of wood are nice. I say experiment with them. And they're not too expensive from what I understand. Have you ever used different woods? I haven't. Smoke mead every day. Oh yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for the $5. That's great. Let's see. Would you recommend using a yeast with a lower ABV tolerance for a sweet mead? Yes. If you would like to use less honey, which everyone wants to try and save some money ultimately. That helps with it. Now, the thing is, I myself enjoy, like I said, a hefty, hearty mead, a 18%er, but that does require a lot of honey. So it just depends on where you're at. If you have a big old 60-pound pail, then you can afford to use more. If you have a 3-pound, that's all you have, and you have 1 gallon of water, you're probably going to make a pretty standard, normal mead in between this, or dry it out using most yeast. But I would definitely try and choose if you want to try and save a lot of money with honey, or you can always back sweeten with other things in cheaper manners. What is your favorite mellow mel? My favorite mellow mel I've ever made was my apple cinnamon. I've got a peach one in there that's going right now. What else do I have? I've got blood orange. I've got regular orange. I've got lemon and lime. I have a pear one. I have strawberry and banana, which that one didn't turn out very good. And then I've got 2 traditional meads, and one is Tupelo honey, and then the other one is just a Desert Creek honey. And so but my favorite so far has been my apple cinnamon. It's just turned out really good. I don't know if it was because I did something different or not. Have you ever used mint in a mead? I've used peppermints. I've never used mint, like mint leaves or anything like that. Eventually, I'd like to try that. But, like I said, huge list of meads to make. I'll get there. Assuming you have enough honey, do your meads make it to the ABV of your yeast tolerance usually? Or do they stop short? Most make it to the yeast tolerance because I very rarely have capped out the yeast. And it's just because I haven't used that much honey. Now, I will tell you right now that I have about 5 videos that I haven't done. I've got 2 big meads videos that you'll see sometime in the future that are using a lot of honey. So that's why this $60 turned, 60 pounds of honey is gone so quickly. Can you link your honey company? Yes. Give me one moment. We have Dutch Gold Honey. It's a nice, I really like them. The thing is, there's shipping, you have to pay shipping on these things, so you're going to pay probably $50. I paid $50 worth of shipping to get my 60 pounds of honey here. How often do you take gravity readings after you start your primary fermentation? Probably probably every 1 to 2 days just to see where it's sitting, and that will generally give me an idea of when I need to add my Fermade K and degas and all of those things. So 1 to 2 days in the beginning, and I'll stop pretty quickly once it drops out. Once it gets to level, if it's going to level, then I'll stop. What's your most experimental mead you've made? I would say either the peppermint one was experimental, which I don't know if it really was that crazy. Lemon and lime was probably the one I was like, this is going to be bad. And then I made it, and it's actually turned out really good, which is interesting. So if you're looking to make a lemon and lime mead, I would try that. It's not too bad at all. There's a video of it too. Do you stop degassing at a certain sugar break? You'll notice when you need to slow down the degassing because the bubbles will happen less. And it happens, once your fermentation starts slowing down, you'll generally not have to degas as much because it's not as active as it was. Have you ever used avocado honey? And if so, what did you make it with? I have not. If you're looking at the Dutch Cold honey website right now, I'll tell you all the honeys I want to try. Let me get to it real fast. There is alfalfa honey, which sounds really good. Blueberry honey, which also sounds very, very, very nice. Hold on, Then avocado blossoms, which are, if you look at this site, it's not too bad. $148 for 60 pounds of honey. In hindsight, is not too bad. You're going to pay probably $50 in shipping, so $200 for about 60 pounds of honey. You're going to get, if you use the average amount of honey per mead, about 3 gallons, you're going to get 20 gallons of mead. So that's a fair amount. If you're making a hydromel, you could possibly get, 40 gallons of mead. So it really just depends on what you're making. See you later, Receive. I'm glad I could help. Appreciate you stopping in, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Last couple ones I want to see. Blueberry blossom sounds really good. Buckwheat, I've heard that's a very nice honey. It's darker, which could be interesting. Mesquite, I've heard it's also really good. And then Moreland, it sounds interesting. Moreland raw clover and Moreland raw wildflower. Those are interesting. There are a ton of, I highly suggest Dutch Gold for this. You can get a lot of great honey from it. But, all right, I'm going to answer the last few questions, and then I've got to start cleaning up and get my life sorted out over here because I got lots of stuff. But this guy's going to go, he's ready to sit for, probably about a month. And like I said, I'll use if you saw earlier, I have a freezer, stand-up freezer that is going to ferment this at about 62 the whole time, and that will keep it in the range where it's optimal to ferment, which, by the way, if you're looking to ferment things in specific ranges, it's better to ferment closer to the bottom of the range than it is to the top. You'll stress out the yeast the least. That's hard to say. Would you recommend trying a Bochet hydromel? I've never thought about Bochet and hydromel going together. It could be good, though. Yeah, I would say that's worth a try. If you try it, let me know how it goes, because I would try it at some point. I don't really know when that will be, but I will add that to my list of ones to try. I know my hydromel I had died, and so I got to make a new one, which I'll probably not go the strawberry route. I learned kind of quickly. Strawberries just don't work well with a mead. I think that something about them isn't great. So when I make another hydromel, I'm going to do something different with it. I don't know exactly what, but I'm also trying to appeal, like I said earlier, to the flavors where people, some people, like my friends, want a lighter mead, and like if you have family or people that don't really drink a lot, and an 18% or 12% mead might feel like just so hefty to them. So giving them a little 7%, 6%er helps out with that. And so I'll probably do that. It's also cheaper. You're using like a pound to a pound and a half of honey per gallon, which is super cheap in reality. Okay, should I go for a darker caramel? Yeah, I would say try that whenever you start going. I mean, there's no perfect Bochet color. You know, I'd say don't go black. You're not going to darken your honey that much. You might get some weird off flavors doing that, but you want to make it not its normal color. I do have a Bochet video. I can't remember how dark my honey got, but I believe it was significantly darker than the starting point. But it worked well. That's probably one of my favorite meads right now, other than my peppermint mead and my apple cinnamon mead. All three of those have really worked well for me, so I am anticipating to make more of those in the future, bigger batches in the future. EB Honey. I've never heard of them, but I'm about to look them up. Are they... Oh. Located in Ashland, Ohio. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Do they do bulk? My big thing now is I'm starting to get, big bulk packs of things because ultimately it's cheaper in the long run, and I make a lot of mead. All right, hey, thanks, Mr. Mouse, for tuning in. Gotta go. I'll see you next time, man. Thanks for hanging out for a bit. All right, I got time for one last question, and then I've got to start cleaning up. So who's gonna give me the last question of the night? First one gets it. I guess we'll find out. I got stuff all over the sides of this from being a little messy. These little 2-gallon buckets are really nice though. All right, ooh, Mitchell, you got the last question. I'll answer both actually. I'm doing a cinnamon apple mead and I have vanilla bean. Should I use that in the mead? Use that. I would use that in the mead. I like apple cinnamon with vanilla. That sounds really good to me. If you make a mead with avocado honey, what would you make? It's still traditional mead. It's just got the avocado blossoms from where the bees were. So ultimately, you're getting some hints of avocado in there. It's still a traditional mead, though. It's not like a mellow or anything fancy like that. Until you add things. If you add fruit, then you got a mellow. If you add whatever else, methylene, if you add spices. So lots of different things like that. All right, guys, I have to get going. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to check out all of my links below, I've got Facebook is the biggest one I want to promote. Man, we got a great Facebook community. I think we just passed 100 members, 100 people on this Facebook. It's super cool to get to talk to you guys, and that's a great way for us to all communicate on a daily to weekly basis. This live stream is fun, but I don't get to do it all the time. So Facebook's really great. You can support me with every other link, and I just appreciate all the things you guys do. So I will be back with more content. I have lots of cool content going on. I've got a really a big one coming up soon. Hopefully I'll get that in your hands so you guys know what's going on. But it should be fun. So thank you guys for watching. I will catch you guys in another video. I hope you've had a great time watching, and I'm excited to keep making mead and to hopefully update you guys on where that's at. So see ya. Appreciate it.